everybody, not sure which brush to use? I've got some tips that'll help you choose the right one to get the job done just right. Let's paint. I have three different brushes, a number 4, a number 8, and a number 16. I'm going to show you how you can use each one to get your painting onto your paper. Okay, so let's start out right in the middle with this number 8. The brush that I'm using is a pointed round, which is probably my favorite brush to use when I'm using watercolor, because with it you can get a lot of different effects. It's very versatile, and honestly, if I were going to be painting something outside and I didn't want to bring several brushes with me, I could probably get the entire painting done just with this one brush. So to get started, I'm just going to paint a nice simple object. I'm going to go with a pear because that's something that I've painted frequently and often, and it's just a nice easy sculptural form for us to work with. So I'm going to use a little bit of some green that I mixed up to just get the outline of my pear blocked in, and you can see I'm using the point of the brush for the most part to get my drawing onto my paper. Okay. Next, I'm going to take a little bit of some of my dark value paint, which is the darker green, and I'm going to say that my light is coming this way, so my shadow is going to be on the left-hand side, and I'm going to start to get that blocked in. Now notice how I'm holding my brush flat against the paper, and I'm keeping a lot of contact with it. Okay, what that's going to do is that's going to ensure that I don't get any little streaks, that I get some really nice blending. If I were using the smaller brush to do this and going like this, what would happen is I'd get a lot of little visible strokes that could dry in a very streaky way, and we don't want that. We don't want to have streaks in our painting. So the next thing that I'll do is I'll put a little bit more water in with my paint, and I've also mixed in a little bit more yellow so that it starts to become lighter, and I'll start to go right up to that nice dark shadow side that I put in there, and I'm going to let things just sort of run into one another to give me a nice natural sort of a transition. Okay, so that's how I start getting the form, the roundness of the object to appear. I want to go back in and just hit those darks one more time, because if you've been working with watercolor for a little bit, or even if you're new to it, you've probably noticed that watercolor has a tendency to dry a little bit lighter. So a lot of times we have to go back into it to make sure that we don't lose those nice darks, because those nice darks are what's going to give it all that depth and dimension that we want to have. Okay, next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of a shadow underneath it. And you can see I'm still working with this number 10 brush. I'm going to go right up to the edge. It might bleed a little bit because it's wet, but that's okay. Our shadows typically are the darkest right where they meet up with the surface of the object. So we'll just add a little teeny tiny bit more water so that as we move away from that, it starts to fade out. Okay, so we'll just let that sort of end like that. And now I'm going to rinse this brush off, and I'm going to switch. I'm going to take this little brush that I've got, which is the number 4, and I'm going to mix up sort of a nice neutral, sort of a brownish color, and I'm going to use that to create the stem. Now the stem, of course, is small and it's thin, and it's also going to have some shadow on one side of it, which is going to be the left side. So by using this nice thin brush, I can get that very, very thin, slim stem in there without it looking like it's too big or like it's too chunky for the pear. If it runs a little bit, you can always clean your brush off. I sometimes like to just wipe it with my finger and then just lift a little bit of whatever ran, sort of encourage it to go right back into the area that you want to be dark. Okay, now the last part that I'm going to do is I'm going to take this large brush, which this is the number 16, and we're going to give this little pear a little bit of some background so that it doesn't look like it's just floating on the page. Okay, so when you want to block in some background, You want to be able to do that in a way that you can do it quickly, especially if you have a fairly large area to cover. Now, I'm not going to cover this entire sheet of paper, but I do want my background that I put in to sort of naturally fade out from the pear itself. Okay, so let's see, what color should I use? I think I'm going to mix up sort of a brownish purpley tone. I kind of like that color, and I think it will look nice. It'll be dark enough to really help to pop the pear. So I'm going to start with this nice big number 16 pointed round, and I'm going to block some of that in right on this side here where the pear is the lightest. What that will do is that'll just really increase that sense of it being nice and light on that side and not just sort of floating on the page, okay? And then as I move away from that bit of background that I put down, I'm going to get a little more water on my brush, and I've got to be careful around that stem because that's still wet. And I'm just going to start to pull the paint away from the edge of the pear. And the reason that I'm doing that, and the reason that this larger brush is really effective for that, is I don't want to have a halo or an outline around the pear, because if I did have that, it's going to start to look a little bit more, like a line drawing or like a coloring book, and we don't want to have that effect. We want it to really look like a painting, like it's actually three-dimensional. So in order to do that, you have to avoid having anything that's too linear. Okay, so now that we've got that in, our pear is not just floating right in the middle of the page. And then I think the last thing that I might want to do is just introduce maybe a little bit more color into this. So I'm going to take a little bit of some of my yellow and I'm going to mix it up with some nice bright red. And I'm going to use the large brush to do that with a little bit more water on it. And I'm going to just add some of that in. I'm going to let it sit on top of both the lighter and the darker side, sort of right in the middle. And you have to wait until everything is dry in order to do that. But what that'll do is just give me a little bit of some surprise color. I can also throw a little teeny tiny bit of that right on the stem of the pear. And that's it. Just remember, there isn't only one brush that's the correct brush. Keep experimenting and you'll find the one that's just right for whatever it is that you need to do. And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe and leave us a comment in the comments section. See you next time.